Legislature's back in session, still in the second reading. The next bill up is bill number 59-38 COR. Senator Dueñas, you are recognized, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to motion to place Bill 59-38 COR, introduced by myself, Christopher M. Dueñas, Frank F. Blas Jr., Biantiniata, Jesse Lujan, Vincent A. Vibora, Sean Gumatautau, Joe S. Augustine, Sabrina Salas Montanani. It's an act to add a new 2611.2 to Chapter 26, Division of Title II, Guam Code, annotated relative to requiring the itemization of business privilege tax on all sales receipts, invoices, and other documentation provided to customers, and to establish the penalties for noncompliance to be known as the Business Privilege Tax Transparency Act of 2025 to the third reading file. And I'd like to discuss it, Mr. Speaker.
You can proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I know that to some in this body and to some who have followed along, this is not a new idea. As a matter of fact, I believe several years back, maybe a couple decades or a decade and a half ago, this was actually the law and it was repealed. So I did not come before this body this afternoon to pretend that I'm doing something new or novel, but I want to give a background before I go into what the bill actually does in order to explain why I asked several of you to be my co-sponsor on this, and why I'm going down this road once again to try to bring sense to our tax system under the business privilege taxes. Many of us who have consistently throughout our time of running for office have responded to several institutions, instrumentalities, groups, to go before them and be questioned on what are some of our policy positions and why we think that those organizations should take a look at us in terms of running for office. One of those organizations is the Guam Chamber of Commerce. The Guam Chamber of Commerce boasts that it is basically the overall representative of Guam businesses, both large, medium, and small on Guam, and they even say predominantly small. One of the questions that they've asked, at least almost for the last, I would say, 5 cycles that I've run for office consistently in their group get-togethers, is would you be willing to introduce a sales tax? And you know, it's kind of interesting because from what I understand within the Guam Chamber of Commerce, they're split and they're divided on this particular issue. That's why I think they didn't provide any testimony with regard to this, because there's no real consensus within the organization. But what I wanted to say is I believe, and I'll explain why, you can't get there from here without this proposal. And what I mean is, you cannot get to a sales tax unless you establish a certain amount of data, I would say 3 to 4, maybe 5 years of information that shows that if you transform our system from a business privilege tax to a sales tax, you will have evidence so that our bondholders don't call our bonds because we've changed our tax structure. We know, Mr. Speaker, that hundreds of millions of dollars that have been borrowed on the market to be able to fund many different projects within our government are based on the business privilege tax. In fact, we've discussed this in a prior bill that we've discussed on the floor here, that is based on the first 3% of our business privilege tax, which basically cannot be touched, because as we go to every budget cycle every year, our bonds are paid as the first payment before we even start appropriating money for the operations of our government. Those bondholders obviously have obligations, and they have obligations to those who they've gotten the capital from, and they will not jeopardize that funding source. And when you transform from a business privilege tax to a sales tax, which is something they might not see as understanding, we could be on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars to be paid right away as those bonds get called, because we've changed our tax structure. So that is the premise for which I go down this road once again to attempt to bring sense and transparency to our business privilege tax system. Let me go over what the bill does, and I'll just go bullet for bullet, and then I'll make some remarks and open up to the floor, of course. Bill 59-38, the purpose of the bill. The bill requires businesses to itemize business privilege tax on all receipts, invoices, and related documents provided to customers. It aims to enhance public transparency and consumer awareness of the true costs behind goods and services. It supports the public's right to understand how government-imposed taxes affect their purchases. Why does transparency matter? The business privilege tax, BPT, is often misunderstood as a hidden cost within prices. This bill clarifies what portion of the payment is tax. Just as other jurisdictions display sales tax separately, Guam residents deserve the same transparency and fiscal literacy. This also promotes greater accountability amongst businesses while empowering consumers to make informed spending decisions. This bill is modeled after precedents. Hawaii and New Mexico have adopted similar itemization practices. Guam can adopt this model to fit our local context while still improving disclosure practices. Addressing small businesses' concerns, Mr. Speaker, this bill is not intended to burden or punish small businesses. The proposed 3-month rulemaking process, followed by a 6-month period before enforcement, provides for point-of-sale system updates, staff training, guidance and regulations to be issued by the Department of Revenue and Taxation, DRT. Open to refining the bill, minimize unintended impacts, particularly for sole proprietors, and home-based businesses. That's what we could do to make it work, possibly. Colleagues with concerns are encouraged to propose amendments and all efforts to improve the bill to see if we can make it a better product. Enforcement and compliance. The itemization requirement will not change the tax rate or structure of business privilege tax, only the way it is communicated to customers. Penalties for non-compliance are designed to encourage adherence without crippling business operations. The Department of Revenue and Taxation will develop specific rules and guidelines within 90 days. Rebutting opposition. Some opponents argue that this may confuse customers into thinking BPT is a new tax on them, but this bill aims to clarify its presence. While businesses understand BPT is not a sales tax, the principle of transparency should not be limited by semantics. As public trust in government finances fluctuates, it is our responsibility to embrace financial clarity wherever possible. A call to action. This is a pro-taxpayer, pro-transparency bill. Guam residents deserve the ability to see, understand, and question how taxes factor into their daily expenses. I urge your support in moving this measure forward in good faith and with open minds. Some additional information, Mr. Speaker. Hawaii and New Mexico relevant examples of BPT transparency. Hawaii General Excise Tax, GET. Hawaii has a general excise tax that functions similar to Guam's BPT. It is a gross receipts tax imposed on businesses, not customers. However, Hawaii allows businesses to pass on the GET as a separate line item on receipts, as this has become common practice. Businesses typically display the GET tax or GE tax at checkout, even though the responsibility remains on the business, not the consumer. This practice has increased consumer awareness about the real costs of goods and services. It has promoted fiscal transparency without legally redefining who is responsible for the tax. Importantly, GET itemization is optional, not mandatory, but it is now so widespread that customers in the state of Hawaii expect it. New Mexico's gross receipts tax, GRT. New Mexico also imposes a gross receipts tax on businesses, not a sales tax on consumers, but like Hawaii, allows businesses to itemize this tax on receipts. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department provides clear guidance on how businesses may display this on their invoices and receipts. Itemization helps. Customers understand how much of their payment contributes to taxes. Businesses maintain better record keeping and compliance. Even when itemized, the tax remains the business's burden, not the consumer's, similar to Guam BPT model, and that was New Mexico. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad my staff disciplined me a little bit from my normal extemporaneous remarks on my legislation, because this is a very technical bill. And here are the facts laid before us. My only follow-up comments before we go to the floor for discussion is this. I find it very difficult to believe, and I read with a little bit of humor one of the testimonies that was provided, although I take it seriously, by a business that said, essentially, I have a business and I'm opening a new business, and these were 2 retail locations. And they found it difficult to maintain within their POS system the records and track it, and talked about how much of a burden it would be, and expense. Mr. Speaker, I'm familiar with several businesses that are run by friends of mine. I do a little bit of rental myself. We're exempt because we don't get to that level of income. So I've been familiar with POS systems and other modalities at which, taxes are paid and implemented throughout a business and how they handle it. I find it very difficult to believe, within the tight margins that most businesses on Guam have, that businesses by and large are paying the business privilege tax as a privilege of doing business and not passing it on to their customers. One example that I like to use, and one of my favorite places to grab a sandwich, is Subway. Subway itemizes their GRT, estimated GRT, on their receipt, as many other businesses do. I know of several contractors that had contacted me when I introduced this bill and provided me a redacted copy of their contracts, but showed that they clearly charge not only 5%, but 5.26% in anticipation that many of them use their credit card in order to be able to make payments for various reasons, benefits, mileage, things like that. I'm just gonna say this. I don't know how any business, particularly in retail, runs their business without a point-of-sale system in an efficient manner. A point-of-sale system is one of the primary record-keeping capabilities of tracking your costs, tracking your sales, tracking everything that you do within your business. I can understand it might be onerous on some of the smaller businesses that don't currently use that system. But I will say this, it's an honor system that we currently have in place right now that really has no audit trail other than maybe Rev and Tax deciding random audits. This is the tax system that we have on Guam. Is it fair by and large? Perhaps. Is it transparent and is it visible? I say no. I say right now it's not. And I would find hard-pressed to believe that that would be challenged. Because simply put, probably only a fraction of your every day, every week, every month, every year businesses will you pull up an invoice or receipt and see BPT as an itemized item on that transaction. So as I close with this, Mr. Speaker, honestly, I get quite passionate about my bills. This bill, up, down, whatever, I'll enjoy the comments. But the truth is, I want to say it one more time. If the Chamber of Commerce and other individuals who want to and think that one of the best taxation policies we can have on Guam that's transparent and people understand is a sales tax, you will not get there if you don't start from here. So whether this goes into law, doesn't go into law, whatever else, we'll see what happens. But it's an effort. It's an effort towards transparency. It's an effort towards letting our people understand where their taxes go, or at least how they pay their taxes. I was surprised, actually, once again, talking about my pullovers, and some of my staff commenting to me that they've received positive feedback within the community, saying, yeah, I want to see whether the price at that store includes the BPT as part of that price that I'm paying, or are they collecting it and then having to remit it, and I don't see it. The last point I'm going to make, Mr. Speaker, is we are going to be discussing in the coming days a proposal to reduce the BPT from 5% to 4%. And one of the largest arguments in our community is, will that make prices go down? Will we save money? Will those who go out and shop in the stores see an exponential decrease in the products and commodities they're buying? I say that predominantly what drives that is the margins of which businesses operate on. But if you go to business A and buy a jar of mayonnaise, and go to business B and buy a jar of mayonnaise, and both of them have a visible BPT, and one is 30 cents more than the other, you will know that the BPT didn't cause that. That is the business's margin, store A, store B. If there's a difference in the price, it's difference because that's their markup and that's their margin. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to enjoy the fun and discussion on the floor with regard to this bill and look forward to doing my closing remarks in the end.
You're very welcome, Senator. On the bill, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Good Senator from MTM, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I have to rise in opposition to this bill. I believe in transparency, but transparency should never be a Trojan horse for raising taxes on our people. Bill 5938 is branded as the BPT Transparency Act, but it is in fact a tax shift in disguise. A tax shift that will go directly to consumers' wallets. So I will not stand by while a so-called transparency measure stealthily increases cost of living for our families. This bill will convert BPT into a visible charge on every receipt. This will effectively push the tax hike onto consumers at the checkout. This is a stealth tax hike. As businesses pass on the BPT as a separate line item, everyday Guamanians will see higher out-of-pocket costs. Higher out-of-pocket costs for goods, higher out-of-pocket costs for services, just higher cost, period. And doing this under the guise of transparency at a time when families are already stretched thin, with our markets in chaos as we're not sure what the cost of goods will be in the next 3 months, with tariffs maybe coming in, maybe not. Nobody knows. And so, even under the best of times, I would question the wisdom of raising taxes on our people right now. And we're not taxing the top 10%, the top 1%, the ones that are doing the best among us. We're taxing everyday consumers. It's regressive. It hits the average people who spend a greater proportion of their paycheck on consumer goods. And it's also a burden on small businesses. This compliance that they have to go through isn't free. Many will need new software, training, paperwork to meet the mandate. We have to erect a whole new compliance regime to fix a problem we created ourselves with this law, with this bill. This undermines the purpose of the BPT. BPT was always intended as a tax on businesses' gross receipts, not a direct sales tax on consumers. The itemizing of the BPT undermines the very nature of this tax. And we've done this dance before. I was around in the early 2000s when businesses started putting the BPT on the receipts. Confused everybody. What's this about? And here we are, bringing that dead horse back up. And it's a mistake. It's going to cause all sorts of problems. And when those problems come, we're just going to say, oh, well, jolly willigers, there's a big problem here. Might as well just convert it to a sales tax to fix all of the woes. Fix a problem that we are creating ourselves if we were to pass this legislation. So I urge my colleagues not to vote for this bill. One of the things I think is important is economic fairness. And this bill is a threat to that. Shifting this tax visibility to consumers is highly, highly regressive. If you have a lower income, you will feel this more. Working class families would feel the squeeze of the tax change the most. As we're over here discussing other tax cuts for the wealthy, just today. That's where our priorities seem to be, and that's not right. This bill is a Trojan horse to try and force a BPT into a sales tax funnel, create the problem, and make the solution a conversion to a system nobody asked for. I've heard it said that there was cost little to nothing for businesses to implement this policy. How do you address testimony from small business owners that many of Guam's retailer point-of-sale system cannot easily itemize BPT without expensive upgrades? Does this not burden our mom-and-pop stores? Bill 5938 penalizes businesses $500 for each receipt that doesn't show the tax, up to $10,000 per year. If a retailer struggles to update its systems in time, especially given the high inflation and a fragile economic recovery, do you believe such steep fines won't sink these businesses? Drive them out of our community? One testifier reminded us that Guam's BPT is a tax on gross receipts, not on individual transactions. Structurally, very different from a sales tax. By forcing it to appear on every customer receipt, are we not effectively blurring that line and creating a de facto sales tax? No, the truth is, this is a first step towards a regressive sales tax, a tax shift onto working class families that many of us strongly oppose due to its unfair impact. DRT is already understaffed. The committee found it has only 2 full-time employees managing BPT's enforcement. Yet this bill mandates DRT to draft new rules within 90 days and fully enforce the change in 6 months. Is it realistic to expect our tax agency to meet those deadlines with limited staffing? Or we created an unfunded mandate that sets up both DRT and businesses to fail under these rushed requirements? Lester Carlson, the director of BBMR, warned that requiring BPT itemization would impose new costs on businesses and significantly strain DRT. Likewise, Small Business Testimony argued that bill would undo administrative and financial burdens on local retailers. So why are we pushing with a policy that your own budget experts and constituents have flagged as harmful? This is a stealth attempt to bring a sales tax to a system that doesn't want it, never asked for it, and is going to be costly for us to upgrade into. So I ask my colleagues to please reject this bill. Believe your eyes. Don't ever let anyone tell you not to believe your lying eyes, because that is the truth of what this is trying to attempt right before us. So please, say no, and with that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, anybody, any other senator wishing to speak on the bill? The senator from Tamuning, sir, you recognize?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. You know, I got to commend the author and the co-sponsors. A little bit of history, and I can understand the gentleman from MTM's compassion. But the author, Mr. Speaker, this bill was born out of revenue tax coming down here, not just this legislature, but in the previous legislature, to testify on behalf of the bills that were introduced. One of them was my bill last legislature in 37th, which is now actually a bill that was, again, currently introduced in 38th Guam Legislature by the previous speaker, gentleman from MTM, food and exemption from food and medicine, and I think there are other additions to the exemptions, I think feminine hygiene products and things of that nature. When revenue tax came to us in regards to testifying, and likewise earlier this year as well, I have a bill sponsored by myself and Senator Taitigui in regards to exemption from prescription drugs. Revenue tax, of course, testified that it'd be utterly impossible to do as such because of the nature of GRT, how GRT versus a sales tax, right? The unfortunate at this point is that we don't have a sales tax. I know the chairman, the OFB chair, is putting together a task force to look at the feasibility of a sales tax. That's going to take some time, but I know that he's putting that together. But because of from the advice, of course, revenue tax in regards to you're giving us all these bills to exempt these items, the easiest way to do it would be at the point of sale. So this bill was born out of that, Mr. Speaker, is that the visibility of the GRT and the receipts should, again, our bill make it to the next session, and the gentleman from Mighty's bill may one day make it to the session floor as well, it'd be easier to be able to exempt these items because it would be at the point of sale. So that's how this bill was born. It's not to disguise as a sales tax. We have a GRT, and to make it visible would be the easiest way to be able to exempt some of the things that we put on bill forms to exempt. And that will be exempted, the easiest way to exempt it will be at the point of sale. That's it. There's nothing else to it. There's no hidden, I mean, like I said, the chairman, Committee of Finance and Budget, is putting together a team, a task force, to look at the feasibility of changing the tax structure. That's going to take some time. That's going to go beyond a couple of legislatures anyway. But you start the conversation now. But because we have these exemptions, because we have these bills, not just in this current legislature, but in previous legislature, in regards to exemptions from GRT, exemption from GRT. The visibility of that will make it easier to exempt based on the visibility of these items on the receipt. There's nothing else, nothing more to it. Again, I ask my colleagues, again, to support the bill if in fact you have bills that are asking for exemptions from GRT. Because revenue tax will come down here. If your bill's not heard yet, will come down and testify, say the same thing. And that's how this was born. That's how this was born. So with that being said, again, it's enough said. It's not a sales tax. It's what was recommended by revenue tax because of the exemptions that this body and previous bodies have put forth in exempting items from the gross receipts tax. And they don't have the mechanism at revenue tax to be able to do that. So the easiest way will be at the point of sale. That being said, again, I commend the author for its introduction. And I ask my colleagues to support this. And most especially if you have bills that are exempting items from GRT. And Senator Tello and I have a bill that is going to exempt prescription drugs. We've had to amend that as well because of the bond covenants and all that. So now it'll come in the form of a rebate. But that being said, that's why this bill was crafted, and this bill was born out of that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, good senator from Zonia, sir, you are recognized.
Buenas Zanafade, Mr. Speaker, and Sidos Masi for the opportunity to rise and speak on the bill. I intend to align my opinion on this measure with the good senator from Mamutaltumaiti's comments. And, you know, admittedly, I'm not a finance guy. I don't think I ever had enough money to be one. But what I do know is, as the sponsor said in his opening, this is not new. This is not novel. Been there, done that. And there's a reason why this was repealed the first time around. Because it brought unnecessary burden and pain to the consumers of Guam. So I'm not sure if this bill is a sales tax hiding in a Trojan elephant. So a pun there. Thank you. But what I am sure of is that shortly after the election last year, our good finance chair told the Pacific Daily News that implementing a conversion from a wholesale gross receipts tax to a retail sales tax will be one of the top priorities of this Republican majority in the 38th Guam Legislature. This is Pacific Daily News, November 24th, 2024. The headline reads, Sales Tax Conversion, Tighter Budget Scrutiny Among Incoming Republican Majorities Focus. No problem with the tighter budget scrutiny to the good chair of the Finance Committee. But he goes on to say that definitely tax relief is something the Republicans ran on and we're going to have to implement it in some form or fashion. So while my good friend from Mongmong Totu Maiti is saying that that's what this bill does now, I think it's very clear that even the author told the people of Guam that this is a gateway to a sales tax. Because admittedly, one of the priorities is to slap a sales tax on the people of Guam who cannot afford the cost of living here already. It was said in the opening that we're going to need 3 to 4 years of data to migrate from a system where the businesses pay for the privilege of doing business on Guam to Tanana and Tun Pete getting slapped with an extra who knows how much % on a sales tax, because this bill will collate and create that data that the sponsor admittedly says will get us to a sales tax conversion, which I absolutely do not support in any way, shape, or form. And I just question, you know, DRT was very clear. Additional staff will be needed to be brought on board and dedicated solely to the monitoring for compliance and the reconciliation of the data. This includes, but is not limited to, adjustments to account for exemptions. Should this bill pass into law, it should be noted that it would add further strain on an already critical understaffed BPT branch. Its employee turnover rate has historically been and continues to be high. Recruitment and retention challenges are similar to what other employers locally and nationwide are experiencing. This is from the committee report, Mr. Speaker. But how is DRT going to bring on the additional staff needed to implement this gateway to the sales tax when we have colleagues in here who say that they plan to cut? How then will DRT afford this process that is going to lead us to our people paying a sales tax? Even the small businesses disagree. Testimony says that this bill will impose undue administrative and financial burdens on the very businesses that we always say we want to help, without delivering meaningful benefits to consumers or the government. I don't know any consumer that asked for this bill. Maybe I'm just not talking to the right consumers, but I know the Chamber of Commerce wants it. Administrative burden on small businesses. The testimony reads, this is particularly problematic in Guam, and I don't find this testimony humorous, where many point-of-sale software providers consider the island an international location. And you know what that means. It's like back in the day when we had to dial 011 plus, you know, they don't recognize us as a territory of the United States, which means we're not getting the benefits, we're not getting the ease. What these small businesses are getting is they're getting charged significantly higher rates for these systems. And as a result, the small business owners already struggle to find reliable, affordable point-of-sale systems to even meet the basic operational needs, let alone the high-tech, highfalutin computer technology that's going to be needed to start the process that will one day, and if it's truly a priority of this Republican majority, that day may come sooner rather than later, that will one day lead to us paying a sales tax. So I definitely am going to, in the words of the senator from MTM, just say no on this bill. And I encourage my colleagues to do the same, only because I don't think the people of Guam signed up for a sales tax, and it's very clear from the remarks that were made on this bill that this is the first step to get us there. And I don't think Tanana and Tunpete want to go. And I don't either, Mr. Speaker. Sijus Masi.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, good Senator from Barragata. Sir, you recognized, and I'll go to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I didn't plan on speaking today, but as I listened to the two previous speakers from MTM and Talapopo, you know, as a small business owner, I just thought about some of the comments that were made, and even as a small business owner in filing my taxes, and when this bill first came across my desk and I read it, and even as I sat and listened to their comments, I took the bill, I asked Mr. AI to please scan through this bill, because nowhere in the bill does it indicate that it's gonna be a hidden sales tax. And even as a small business owner, when I think of how this is what the implications are gonna be as we do business or continue to do business, and what this means in regards to the business privilege taxes, all I'm gonna do is go into my little $500 system that rings things up, and there's a thing in there that says sales tax or no tax, and all I'm gonna do is, with our entire inventory, subtract 5% from the current retail price, add 5% into the tax, and so then when we ring it up, it should come up to the same price. Now, granted, I'm sure, that some people might just keep the price the same, but that's not the intent of the bill. And then to some of the comments in regards to, small businesses and adding that extra cost because they're gonna have to buy or upgrade a new system. Most mom and pop stores, if you haven't been to most of them on Guam, have whether it be from Korea, the United States, or a software program that you can just put on a laptop and buy a scanner, that all have these systems. I mean, even the system that we use, which is like 10 years old, that the previous owner got from a Korean vendor, has a thing that allows you to put a visible tax on it. And so, I mean, I know I didn't plan on speaking today because of my throat. I feel like it's a little better now that I've spoken a little bit more, but I support this bill, and I applaud Senator Duenas for introducing this measure. But I mean, I just want to, for the record, as a small business owner and helping others on Guam, open small little businesses, is that we don't see this as like, hey, I mean, I get the whole DRD thing, but we don't see this as like, hey, this is going to be an extra cost, or hey, now this is an opportunity for us to slap on a sales tax. No, this is us. We see this as, hey, now we can put, when they wonder why the price is the way it is because of this visible sales tax that we have to do. When we order things and we factor in what the cost is going to be, or even services that we do on the internet, when we determine what the price is, right, you're looking at your overhead cost, and then you have to factor in the 5% BPT right now, and then you determine your price. Now, you determine your price, and then you don't necessarily need to factor in the 5% because it's going to be visible. When you determine price, right, you as business owners, you determine price based on market value. What are other people selling it for, right, and what are people willing to pay for it? And so, for me, I was just trying to understand where and use Google and every resource available to me on my laptop to figure out where within the bill, and maybe it's a two-pager, a page and a half, this bill, so I'm not sure, and maybe if the previous speakers want to highlight in the bill where this could be possibly hidden sales tax, and maybe we can proffer an amendment to ensure that this is not a hidden sales tax. But I support this bill, and I commend the authors, and I ask my colleagues to support this bill as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, Gentlelady from Tumalinga, recognized, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon to my colleagues. You know, I am concerned about the comments that was made by some of the small businesses with this legislation. About 90%, actually, of the businesses on Guam are small businesses. Many of them avail themselves of an exemption. So whatever they have to do to comply with this law, it's going to take resources. We're seeing many of our small businesses packing up and leaving. One of my favorite restaurants down the road has packed up and left. Another store selling baby clothing have packed up and left. I mean, the last thing we want to do is deter any more individuals from wanting to just give up, because it's not easy being a business owner. I know, I've had 2 businesses myself. It's not, you're 24/7. And when you're not able to pay the bills, then you usually don't get paid because you have to meet your salaries for your other employees and your products and inventory. So moving forward on this, I mean, I would thought that maybe, because when I looked at the bill, I thought that they might have amended the bill to at least compensate for those small businesses. Anyone making, you know, we've done it many times, anyone making below, you know, 500,000, they're exempt from 2% of the taxes, or certain people certain businesses don't have to pay certain fees. But this bill doesn't address any of that, and I'm disappointed in that. I was hoping that we could. Maybe, well, it's not over yet. Maybe we can move forward on that. But I do, you know, I tried to go online to look at the repealing of this law, and I have a question, I have a couple of questions actually for the author, so I can clearly understand this. First question, Mr. Speaker, is why was the bill repealed in the first place, or why was this repealed in the first place?
Would the author of the bill yield to the question?
So in our committee's research, yes, Mr. Speaker, in our committee's research, the primary reason was over confusion, as well as there was a concern within the tourism community in particular on the issue of taxes, because there's many businesses, of course, that are duty-free. That issue, basically, I think at this point is moot. I think there's an understanding between duty-free and not duty-free. I know that in our research, it showed that one particular retailer, Macy's, had a major concern because that was also confusing to the customer base. When it was added, it was hard to understand, and they had some difficulty and complained about having to explain that this is a tax that Guam implements in terms of its retail tax, and we as a business, much like other businesses with regard to sales tax, add it on. And so that was the primary driver from what our research showed. I would say, in keeping with that, I remain curious, like, does an individual who buys a sandwich at Subway complain that Subway charges 5% BPT, but other burger joints and other places don't? I don't know. But my point is also, because this is part of the question that was asked, the issue with regard to exemptions and the issue with regards to those issues, that's why there's the promulgation of the rules and regs for 90 days. and the implementation over 6 months. You cannot contemplate all the tax policy in a bill. That's what Rev and Tax does. In fact, the speaker that's asked this question now is also shares oversight of Rev and Tax with me. She's actually the regulatory side. I'm the finance side. So the reality is that this question was even asked within the public hearing. But what do I do if I'm exempt? Well, you put 0. What do I do if I'm a small business and I charge 3%? You put 3%. Because that's your tax obligation. So I don't think it's rocket science, but certainly, you know, it had its confusion. It has its bumps in the road. So the idea here is 90 days, promulgate the rules and regulations, set up the policy, 6 months for implementation to associate and let the businesses know what the policy is. But yeah, it's not really even a secret. In fact, probably some other speakers that are going to speak on the floor that had experience with it will talk about, you know, why it was a bumpy road. But, you know, the truth is that if you want transparency and you want people to know what taxes they're paying, then you show it. But yeah, those were the primary concerns, and the primary driver was not that it was a sales tax, it was that it was confusion to implement, and if it's not universal and it's not done across the board, then yes, you can see where a consumer, probably even after watching this hearing, some people will go, Nana, I went to Subway and I paid GRT, but I went and bought a hamburger and thought that GRT. I think I'm gonna buy more hamburger. I don't know. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, in a way, we understand. What I understand is that there was so much confusion going on. There was places like DFS who were worried about this tax being exposed. That was brought up. But you know, if you, another question is, what's the difference between, you know, a BPT and a sales tax? You know, BPT is what is being charged right now, the 5%. A sales tax, we don't even have one. So it's just one charge that we're being taxed on, which is called BPT. It used to be GRT, and they changed that to BPT. So that confusion got out of the way. Now we're looking at sales tax and BPT. It's not, we don't even have a sales tax. It's a BPT. And whether people put it on their receipt or not, believe you me that they're putting it in their pricing because they have to pay for those taxes. So it's incorporated, whether they put it on the receipt or not. Now, a while ago during the Calvo administration, I know we were looking, Rev and Tax was looking at converting to a sales tax, meaning getting away from BPT and calling it a sales tax. And the reason why they were looking at doing that is because the lost revenue that this island was incurring because people were going online and purchasing online. Now, in other states, it's called sales tax. And then the federal government allows that state, wherever the purchase was made from, to collect sales tax. It's recognized as sales tax. Rev and Tax was told the only way that they can convert so that government of Guam, the island of Guam, can avail themselves of taxes from off-island purchases was to convert to a sales tax. It's not adding another tax. It's just going from BPT and calling it sales tax. BPT is what everyone pays, 5% or 3% or 2%. a BPT. But a sales tax is a little bit different. If you're purchasing something, there's a tax to it. What we're not seeing right now is many of the companies are not showing it, but it's there, right? It is there. They're incorporating it. But if we're going to go down this road and calling this exposing on a receipt a BPT, that's exactly what we're doing, right? I mean, this bill, it's going to say $5 for milk, $5 for whatever, lettuce, tomatoes, and then at the end, there's if it's a big enough company, they'll probably pay the full, 5% tax, BPT tax, correct? Okay, as we move forward, and if it changes to a sales tax, which everyone is so afraid of, that we're double taxing, that's not going to happen. That verbiage will probably just be, instead of BPT, will be sales tax instead. But it's technically almost the same. Okay, shaking your head, no. Okay. So if you think that I'm confused, can you imagine out there how everyone else is getting confused? And maybe that's why it was repealed. So I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I heard what MTM was talking about, the good senator from MTM, and he made a lot of sense, he was confused, not confused, he was concerned that the confusion and that it's almost like double taxation. I don't see that happening, calling it a BPT and then turning around and making it a sales tax, almost like, being taxed two different ways. I didn't see that. But what I do know is that it's going to cost our small businesses to convert to this. It's going to cost rev and tax because they don't have the manpower to do this. And I'm standing here being confused myself, trying to figure this out, so that whatever does happen, because I do believe in transparency. I mean, that's one thing I do believe in. And it would be nice to see, when I buy something, how much taxes are being charged to that certain business, because that business person is charging it to me. He's going to let me cover that tax because he put it on the receipt. $5 for milk, and now he's going to put BPT, which I am going to have to pay for, and at the end. So it's almost similar to, like, when you go to restaurants, they put gratuity, or some of them put service charge. You ever go to restaurants and have that same scenario happen? You're like, okay, what is it? Is it gratuity? Is everyone going to get this tip? Or is this not a tip? Is it a service charge for, what am I a service charge for? Maybe that's the next one, because I'd like to know that my server is getting some of that tip. That's for sure. But I don't know, because they're calling it a service charge and they're calling it gratuity. It's confusing. I think we're in the right direction here, trying to find something that's simple enough for our people to understand, and that they're not being doubly taxed. Two different ways, sales tax, BBT, it's technically the same. I'm looking forward to, our good senator from Jigo, who's been at Rev and Tax to try and, straighten things out. But one thing that I think we are going down the right path on this, because transparency is important, but I don't think 90 days is going to be enough time to go through this. I really don't. I mean, we want to do this right. Let's do it right, so we don't end up coming back here and repealing it because there's just too much confusion. So I know my time is up, and this is when I wanted to proffer just an amendment to the legislation And, you know, if you give me 1 minute, I'd just like to talk to the author of the legislation, just to talk to him about a number that might be more helpful, okay?
Before we do that, Mr. Chair, I just want this for the benefit of the body. I know you, when you send out the messages, because you're the speaker and you created this chat group that we have for all senators to show how really simple it is. And you'll see that I bought a Titan turkey sub this day, and I took a picture of the receipt, and it's really not even rocket science. The subtotal of my purchase was $10.90, and Subway, they're getting a lot of advertisement today, but Subway calls it still the GRT, and it says estimated GRT 5%. So for my Titan turkey sandwich, I paid probably 54% tax, and if you add the grand total, I paid the tax after the purchase. So I paid the taxes, but I'm sure they remitted it to Rev and Tax for me, because I certainly didn't drive up there and give Rev and Tax 54 cents. But this is really how simple this is. Really how simple this is. Subway, they're geniuses. But yes, I'd like to speak to the retiring speaker.
Okay, 1 minute recess. Legislation is back in session. Senator Tidy, will you step to the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Speaker. And notwithstanding, I'd like to make an emotion without having to put it in writing because it's a very simple one.
Motion
We're
or
just
amendment?
extending it.
Motion
then-
or amendment?
The motion to, well, actually, notwithstanding, I would like to make a motion to be able to do an amendment without having it in writing.
Okay.
Is that okay?
No, let me see
Okay.
what you're gonna do first.
Mr. Speaker, all I'm doing is that it's on page 3, line 12, striking out 90 days and putting 6 months. This would allow it a whole year to go through from the promulgating of rules and regulations down to the implementation or the completion of the requirements set forth. So, I mean, something as this, something as such a big change, you know, in our system, and allowing, maybe this would help too small businesses. I just hope it does not deter small businesses from closing down because of all these, you know, hurdles that are put in place for them to even have a business where they have to sacrifice so much already. I'm hoping that it gives them enough time, you know, to find equipment to convert to this type of system, you know, and provide whatever's needed on that. So, and I'm hoping the rules and regulations can also provide some kind of leeway too when they're promulgating rules and regs. I know that if you go down this line, I do have a question though. When they promulgate rules and regulations, do the regulations come to the legislature for approval?
Wait, let's deal with the first.
Oh, okay.
Let's deal with your amendment first, okay?
Okay, so that's my simple amendment.
Okay, so your amendment is on page 3, line 12,
Yes, sir.
and that changed with it 90 days to 6 months.
Right, crossing out the 90 days and then putting
Okay,
6
on
months.
the amendment. Good gentleman from Tumoni.
Just wants to, Mr. Speaker, and I think it's a good amendment. Definitely, 90 days is usually a tight window, but I figured when we were crafting the bill that, as I mentioned earlier, that it's not a new road we're going down, but I can understand in terms of trying to get it right. And I think a full year for rules and regulations, community discussion in the community, what this is really all about, and you know, clearing up some of the comments that have been here on the floor by making sure that we educate the public. And I really like what the retiring speaker actually said, because it's true. She was very clear. She knows that the 5% is built into the costs that businesses are charging in their services. She knows she's paying that tax. It's just whether it's visible or not visible. The truth is right now is, like I said, if you buy a sandwich right now, you know what you're paying. If you go to another place, you don't know. It's an honor system. This company can be audited very easy. Very easy. So this is some of the things that we're trying to accomplish: transparency, level playing field, but I can understand that takes time to implement. And, you know, just real quick on rev and tax, and I'll say it on my closing again. I was talking to my colleague, like I said, who we share rev and tax. Rev and tax doesn't have a money problem. Rev and tax has a hiring problem. And I said that during the hearing, and they know that. I can show you what their current lapses are that they're tracking. They don't have a problem. They're not hiring, and I don't know why.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right. On the amendment to change on page 3, line 12, to delete 90 days in place of 6 months. Okay, on the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question about, you know, whether these rules and regulations come to the legislature for approval at all, it's not in this legislation. Is that, I'm going to ask the author of the legislation if he could just answer that question.
Would you yield to that question?
I do, Mr. Speaker. I believe in our law, whenever we call for promulgation of rules and regulations, there is a time certain as to which they are remitted, and if they are not codified, they lapse into law, by law. But if I'm wrong, I will make an amendment. But can we take a 1-minute recess to consult with legal?
Okay, we'll take 1 minute recess. Legislature's back in session. Senator Tidig, will you still have the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that short recess to talk with the author of the legislation and the recommendation of just ensuring that the AAA process is provided in this, which allows for these rules and regulations to come to the legislature for approval. So that being said, notwithstanding, I would like to make a motion to incorporate it right after regulations, to incorporate, promulgate rules and regulations, the AAA process, or have legal actually has the correct verbiage, but if you give me 1 sec, she's coming with me right now. And also at the same time to have legal make any changes.
Okay, but to consider, I need to have the exact language. Page 3, line 12.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Speaker, if I may. It is on page 5.
Page
Okay.
5.
And it is,
Ma'am, how do you get page 5 out of 3 page?
oh, she's using another bill. Okay. So it's on page 3. Actually, it's on page 3, Mr. Speaker, line 11. And it says, the Department of Revenue and Taxation shall promulgate rules and regulations, and that's where you put shall promulgate rules and necessary to implement the provisions of this act pursuant to A1 of 9303, section of Chapter 9 of Title 5 Guam Code Annotated within 6 months of enactment. of its enactment. If you want, I know it's quite extensive, so let me go ahead
more than
and
3 words.
let's put it in writing so it makes it a lot clearer.
It's more than 3 words, so I need it in
Yes,
writing.
it
Okay?
is.
Let's take a recess.
I thought we can get away with it. We'll be right back.
Legislature is back in session. The amendment has been passed out. Senator Tiedegree, now that it's been passed out, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for everyone for your patience on this. And it's on line 11, page 3, and it's an amendment on section 26110.2E of the bill to read, letter E, the Department of Revenue and Taxation shall promulgate rules and regulations, and this is the inclusion necessary to implement and in inclusion the provision of this act pursuant to A1 of 9309 of Chapter 9 of Title 5 Guam Code annotated. And of course, we had an amendment earlier that says within 6 months of enactment. That was already included earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the author of the amendment, you know, I understand the amendment, but for the listening audience, what is Section 9303? And the only reason why, because everybody wants to talk about transparency. What is that? That's all.
Okay. If you'd like, it's a AAA process. It's a process in which mostly all rules and regulations that are promulgated through an agency, once they go through this whole process of 90 days, 5 days to put it out, there is a scheduled process. Then it comes to the body, and then the body has a certain amount of time to act on these rules and regulations if there's any changes that need to be done. If not, then it automatically lapses into law.
Thank you, but I wish, you know, when the legal was helping, they should just put the word in there, like the AAA, then it would have been done. It's ready, 1 tree gone. Thank you.
Just been informed by the by legal counsel. First off, just for correction, it says pursuant to parentheses A. And then parentheses 1, take out A1, okay? Just, we don't want to cut trees down for that. So remove in A1, okay?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Speaker, if I may, I think another senator may stand up to make an amendment to this amendment, and that is to strike out exactly what you said. So if you can allow...
I'll allow that.
Oh, since I still have the floor, Mr. Speaker, then I'll make the motion, delete the one that you mentioned, and then we can move along.
So move.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, on that strikeout, that amendment that he made to strike out A1, it should be A1 of 9309 because it does have limitations. If you leave that 9303 in there, there are some limitations. So pursuant to Chapter 9 of Title 5, is that okay? Yeah. Okay.
And Mr. Speaker, that's why I asked, when legal gets involved with any of us, just write it down what it is. The AAA process within Chapter 9, and it's done. And maybe the legal can come up with the amendment that's needed, and we do it one more time, and we'll be done with this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I'm making that amendment. If legal can just fix it, and we can move on. Because I'm in agreement with the AAA.
I'm not going into recess for this. Go ahead. Thank you for the slow walk to the legal counsel. Go ahead, Senator.
Anyway, Mr. Speaker, the amendment would basically state, when you come to the pursuant to, then it will change. You strike out the A1, 9303, so forth. It goes, pursuant to Title 5, Chapter 9, the Administrative Adjudication Act. Then you continue on with within the 6 months of enactment.
Okay, on the amendment to the amendment, any issue? Any discussion? Good Senator from Barragata.
I think I'm satisfied with just taking out A1 of Section 9303 and just keeping it as Chapter 9 of Title 5, Guam annotated. I think that's a good compromise versus just stating a broad term without having any reference to the GCA. So that's my concern with just putting in the verbiage. I think it's better to keep the Chapter 9 of Title 5. Sujas Masi. Okay.
1 minute recess. Back from recess. Senator Slogstein, can you clean this up and we move on, please?
I think we're done with it. Just the motion is just to ask the body to accept it, and we can move
Can you
on.
go ahead and repeat the motion, the amendment to the amendment?
The motion is to make the amendment on the amendment. After the word pursuant to, it will say Title 5, Chapter 9, the Administrative Adjudication Act, within 6 months of enactment. Everything else is striked out.
Say, can you repeat that again? Repeat it again, one more time, please.
Okay, one more time. I'll go even slower.
The way you walk, go ahead.
The way it's written here. Okay. After the word pursuant to, it'll read Title 5, Chapter 9, parentheses, the Administrative Adjudication Act, close parentheses, within the 6 months of enactment.
Does everybody get that? Are there any discussions on that? Say it one more time.
Okay, why don't we just get a printed copy and then we just give it?
You're good?
We're good, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? No objections? So ordered. Senator Taitigui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, thank you for your patience, everyone. And other than that, I just ask for everyone's support in this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
On the Taitigui amendment as amended, any discussions? Any objections? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill as amended, any senator wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Good Senator from Talapopo, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 59-38. I will always rise up in this chamber to speak on behalf of all of Guam's tax-paying citizens. I will speak in support of all measures that support them. That support, in turn, supports all of the government of Guam services around us, including many of the policies that we set in this building. Bill 59 is just one alternative to the ongoing conversations of the 38th Guam Legislature to support our island community in the face of record revenues in the government of Guam's general fund and reported budgetary surpluses by the Office of the Governor of Guam. Mr. Speaker, Bill 59-38 will help every customer see or perhaps understand the full tax burden on a transaction from Jigo to Moleso. 3 states have similar disclosure requirements similar to what we are considering today. Communicating tax costs may increase public understanding of what their particular business transaction has on that particular business. Simply put, what is the perception of the transaction and your thought that you were well aware of the cost and taxes associated with the transaction. This policy appears on the surface to be one that is value relevance. It is the utility and the efficacy of financial information that's right in front of us, especially after a purchase. Mr. Speaker, this bill will need at some point the resources to ensure compliance. And we've talked a little bit about it earlier, but a little bit more history. In approving Public Law 27-41, and I remember it vividly, which similarly proposed a visible GRT, former Guam Governor Felix Camacho urged senators in 2003 to provide resources that may be necessary to implement such a policy, recognizing that DRT staff will be required to thoroughly scrutinize information to ensure compliance and accuracy in order to minimize overpayment or underpayment of taxes. It was later repealed on May 18, 2007, just over 18 years ago to the day. Mr. Speaker, each and every one of us here inside the session hall are hearing from every level private sector that they will have limited or maybe no dedicated resources for what is outlined in the proposal that will need to be attended to by many. Also, our public sector agencies will need the same, namely the Guam Department of Revenue and Taxation. Shared priorities if we want to move Guam forward in the face of a changing world and changing realities around us. I do stand in support of Bill 59. We need to stand in support of all taxpayers at this time, whether the business transaction is for a hamburger or a turkey sandwich, thanks to Senator Duenas, a steel pipe, or for purchasing a cell phone plan. Bill 59-38 can provide greater transparency in tax collection and reporting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill as amended, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? On the bill as amended, any senators wishing to speak? No senators wishing to speak. Senator Duenas, you can close on the bill as amended.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at the request of Senator Calvo, I would like to just move that amendment first. She would like to be a co-sponsor. So at this point, I make the amendment to add Senator Calvo as a co-sponsor to Bill 5938 COR.
I'm going to go first on motion on the amendment to add Senator Calvo as a co-sponsor. Okay. Any objections? No objections. So ordered. Senator Duenas said, I apologize. There is a colleague that wanted to speak.
Please proceed. Sure.
Two colleagues. Okay, so ladies first. Ladies first. Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you have the floor.
Buenas, Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of Bill number 59-38 COR, the Business Privilege Tax Transparency Act of 2025. This legislation is a meaningful step towards building a more open and accountable government by ensuring that the BPT, or Business Privilege Tax, is clearly disclosed to consumers at the point of sale. For years, the BPT has been embedded into the final price of goods and services, invisible to the average consumer. While this has been standard practice, it has also contributed to confusion, misinformation, and a general disconnect between consumers and their role in supporting government operations. This bill does not create a new tax. Let me make that clear. It does not increase the tax burden on our residents. What it does is it promotes clarity. It makes visible what was previously hidden, and in doing so, it strengthens the relationship between the government and the private sector, and the people we all serve. Transparency is the foundation of good governance. When we ask our community to contribute through taxation, they deserve to know how and when those contributions occur. By requiring businesses to itemize the BPT on receipts and invoices, it clearly labeled as business privilege tax, or BPT, we allow consumers to see that part of their purchase is going to support public services like education, healthcare, infrastructure, and public safety. This awareness builds trust, and trust is essential to any functioning democracy. We also recognize the realities of implementation. That is why this bill provides for a 6-month transition period following the promulgation of rules by the Department of Revenue and Taxation. This gives businesses time to adjust their systems, train their staff, and adapt their operations to meet the requirements. The penalty structure is firm but reasonable, and the enforcement framework, it all ensures compliance without placing an undue burden on our business community. I thank the sponsor of this bill the sponsors of this bill for their leadership and for responding to the long-standing call from our business community for greater consistency and transparency in how taxes are presented. I also appreciate the feedback provided during the public hearing, especially from small businesses and industry representatives, which help strengthen the language and purpose of this legislation. At the end of the day, Bill number 5938 COR is about building a more informed public, supporting responsible business practices, and making our government more transparent and accountable to the people, the very people that we serve. So I urge my colleagues to join me in voting in favor of this important bill. And I thank the author of the bill for including me as a co-sponsor. Si Diyos Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Good Senator from Jigo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I stand in full support of this bill, Bill 59-38. And you know, as my colleagues have spoken earlier, that it's a prelude to sales tax. Let's first understand the BBT. Out of the 5, 3 is committed to the bond. The reason why it went from 4 to 5 was because of our current president back in 2018. The administration then, not the current administration, asked for the increase to keep the government running. That went up to 5. And as everybody keeps thinking that, oh, we got a lot of surplus. Por favor, figure it out, Gatson. The surplus came from COVID. And many of my colleagues in the previous terms have said, it's going to end. Yes, it's going to end. But with this current president, the way the beautiful bill is in Congress moving, what we dealt with in 2018 will continue. Then we'll figure out what we're going to do with the 5 to 4 or leave it alone to keep the government running. Now, maybe everybody needs to understand, and as the author of the bill brought up the issue with Subway, I received a bunch of WhatsApp messages, and it's true. Subway gives a very good example. One of them was, it's $44 to buy a sandwich, a classic combo platter, but when they broke it down, subtotal is $41.90. The estimated GRT is 5%, $2.10. The total cost you pay is still $44. It didn't change. Now the same thing is, and the reason why we need to understand that the BBT needs to be exposed, needs to be visible, so that we all know what we're all paying. I mean, it's really unfortunate that at some of the restaurants we all go to, many of us go to, we pay some kind of charge, sangue, gratuity, and you know what? You can deny and refuse to pay the service charge. I've done it in a couple of the restaurants, and then I looked at them and said, never mind, just leave it. And then I give a tip. Because everybody works hard for a living. But when we start talking about this is a step to sales tax, por favor, think about what you're saying. If you want a sales tax, then you can only address 2% of the BBT. Only 2%. And identify how you want that to grow. Because at the same token, at one point, I think I'm the one that introduced the sales tax 6 years ago, and it got diluted, and then everything, then it crashed. And then we start all over again. The chambers approached me and said, hey, try the sales tax again, Senator. Zapata, stop. Let's figure out first where we're at. And I know that the chairman of appropriations is like, when we're going to deal with our budget, we need to be mindful. Next year is a different year. In the previous year, sure, we had surplus. The surplus has not grown as much as it's done in the past few years. And if we don't watch our step, we're going to walk right into a trap, a self-imposed trap. And because of the kind of person I am, I'm a very conservative. Like some of us should all be. When you start using, if you start using your own checkbook, you probably won't spend as the way you've been doing in the body. You need to slow it down. Let's take a look at what's going on. And with this bill, I totally support this. BBT needs to be visible. And when it comes to sales tax, then stand up against the sales tax if you don't want it. But not about being visible. And with that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, I will return back to the author for your closing. I had asked earlier, ma'am, you want to speak? Go ahead, gentle lady from Joniah, I'll recognize you.
Susan Mossy, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I'd like to state a point of order on this bill. So it did have a public hearing pursuant to the open government law and our rules. However, the transcript in the committee report is incomplete. It only, there were 7 senators present at that time, and only the remarks of the sponsor are in the committee report. And the back and forth with the Director of Revenue and Taxation, more importantly, is not all included in the report. And our open government law, 5 GCA 8113, requires that the minutes of all these meetings that are required to be open, that they have adequate minutes. So I would just like to put that on the record, Mr. Speaker, as a point of order. I raised this before with another bill, but I hope this is not a trend of the legislature that we're going to become less transparent, especially in a bill that's advocating for transparency. It's very, I think the public is entitled to see everything that the Director of Revenue and Taxation said in response to our questions that day.
So noted.
That's a point of order, Mr. Speaker. So I will continue with my remarks on the bill, however. And I think, of course, transparency is a great idea. And if ideally implemented to show what companies are going to be sending based on that particular sale as tax, ideally, that would be okay. The problem is that we know from testimony and from experience that that is not what happened the last time they tried to do this. The last time they did this, there were companies that were doing things all over the place differently. And it took 2 years and litigation and AG opinions and front page articles of them trying to correct businesses some had in fact taken the current cost of goods and just put on a 4% on top of it. Of course, they're not supposed to do that, but that's what they were doing and using this transparent BPT law in order to do that. And I don't want to see that for even one day, let alone a 2-year period where they had to bring things to a halt. I think because there is a possibility that that might happen, we should not do that. We should not do anything that's going to risk increasing prices for the consumers. And this bill, you know, they keep saying this is for the consumers, but I can't see that right now. You know, at the time, they wanted, when this was passed before, they wanted to show consumers when the price of goods went up, they wanted to show them the small portion of that that was actually attributable to BPT, as opposed to the company's price of goods for other reasons. I don't think we necessarily need to do that right now. This does not aid the consumers. They know they're paying BPT, and now we have a very complex exemption companies, 90% exemptions. And that did not exist back then either. I think it's even more complicated to implement. But in other words, when the businesses testify, some of them, that this will increase their burden of getting this, updating their systems, getting the receipts to look like what the bill intends. And even that little burden increase on these businesses, to me, we should not risk. We're being told they need to float a bond for the tourism industry because they are failing. Why would we put even a little bit more pressure on them? I don't think we need to. The benefits that we're going to get from this do not outweigh that burden on those businesses, and there is absolutely, I see no benefit to the taxpayers. They're not going to get a reduced cost, they might get increased cost. That's a big risk that I don't want to take. So I just think it's clear from the record, revenue tax is going to have a burden that they cannot meet. We're giving them 6 months to do rules. That's just the rules. Actually, having to implement it, they said, would be very, very difficult. And really very difficult when it's not that useful to them in their regulation of BPT in general, unless everybody implements it the right way. And even with rules and regs and AG opinions and lawsuits, that was not happening. And so I can't imagine that that's going to happen miraculously this time. Revenue tax says point of sale systems have to be redone. I think that's a big burden. She says, enforcement and compliance burdens with this bill, conducting inspections, managing the penalties. I don't think it's necessary. We already know, consumers know they're paying BPT. Hopefully they know we are trying our best to reduce those BPTs when we can. And we just have to keep working on that side, I think, as opposed to putting more burden on any business or putting more burden on those consumers by inadvertent implementation of this and putting more burden on revenue tax. I think if they had testified that this would help them and that we could collect more taxes, that's a whole other story. That was not the testimony. So, you know, I appreciate this, but I would just say I don't think we should go forward. I think we have a lot at risk in going forward with it, and it's not outweighed. Those risks are not outweighed by any benefit. I think that the taxpayers know they are paying BPT. The problem is the exemptions, it's going to change every year for these businesses, perhaps. It depends. what you made in the previous year. It depends. And so I just think instead of putting that burden on the businesses and consumers, that we find another way. Si Diyos masi.
Thank you, ma'am. Final. Are there any other senators wishing to speak on the bill as amended? Final. No other senators? The author of the bill, Senator Dueñas.
Si Diyos masi, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the final. Really appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, to the previous speaker, once again, I say here we go again, but I need to read this into the record so that for every bill, perhaps that my committee does or a committee does, that gets challenged on transparency, I have to do this. Verbal testimony was transcribed and questions and discussion linked in the link works. It is cleared by core. The hyperlinks contain all of the back and forth and all of the discussion. Committee reports are meant to assist more so the public. Senators should be present for hearings because it's their job to do so. As previously discussed, the committee report is a summary of testimony, further discussions linked via question discussion. All committee reports are cleared by core and legal and in line with standing rules. Okay? So this
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, this is not debatable. We go through this every single time. Core has cleared this.
What's your point of order?
Yes. I'm citing the open government law. We as a legislature have put ourselves under the open government law for public hearings, not for all our meetings, but for public hearings. And the public hearings, all public meetings, according to the open government law, have to have minutes. 8113 of the open government law says the minutes of every meeting of each public agency shall be promptly and fairly recorded, shall be open to public inspection, and shall include but not be limited to a record of all motions, proposals, and resolutions offered, the result of any votes taken, and a record of individual votes in events of roll call, insofar as it may do so without violating 8103 of this chapter. An agency may also maintain a record of persons present at the meeting. And so what I'm saying is a link is not minutes. We don't allow any agency to record their minutes that way. We say minutes and audio recordings. That's what we've required all other agencies to do, and I don't understand why the legislature would put a lesser burden on ourselves in transparency and in compliance with the open government law.
Thank you very much.
The senator can take it up with core. It would be a good idea to do that. I'm certainly glad for the discussion on the floor and certainly glad for the amendment that was proffered to ensure that we have 1 year for full implementation of this. I'm also glad that other senators recognize that Hawaii, other locations didn't note that this was rocket science in order to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, once again, unequivocally, I can tell you, it would be very, very difficult for any one of us to sit in this room, in this august body, and think that businesses are not passing on these taxes to consumers. The difference is, it is not visible. It is not transparent. And that's what I believe we need to do in order to move forward. Mr. Speaker, I'm thankful to my good friend, who actually is a small business owner, Senator Borja, who brought up the ability to do this and the ease in which he also is currently operating POS systems and has researched POS systems with regard to this. Mr. Speaker, soon we will be having a public hearing for the budget, even though they've submitted a status quo budget for revenue and taxation, and find out what the true story is in terms of hiring and the reason why we have so much shortage in many areas in rev and tax. One thing I find curious, really, in this body, for some of the members who in the past have even pushed for legal counsel at rev and tax, for staff, and have always said that the reason why is because this is the key to our government, because they are the state, basically the keepers of our revenue. And now we pass it off as, oh, well, we just have to sit back and say, it can't be done. It's too hard. There's really just such a double talk when it comes to that, particularly of certain members in this body who have pushed so hard for that in the past. But I guess for them, it's just too hard. And I don't accept that. I think that if we pass a law, and there's a year to implement this, and there's a proper budget within the agency to do what they need to do, then that's what our people expect of our government, to do its job. So I don't buy the argument of it's too hard. Mr. Chair, I just want to finish by saying, you know, and I thank my good friend, Senator San Agustin from Jigo, for his support once again on this. You know, the bottom line is this is not a sales tax. This should not bring any additional burden to any consumer. The only way that this could possibly bring extra burden to a consumer is if for some reason businesses were doing business and paying the business privilege tax. I cannot imagine, with the economy that we're in, with businesses constantly talking about how their margins are so slim, that there's that benevolence. Oh, we just pay the BPT. We pay the BPT. It's a privilege of doing business. We don't charge it to our customers. I just find that almost impossible. So once again, I ask this body to please consider this legislation, consider the value of it in terms of being transparent, putting everything out there. And while we currently have an honor system, as Reverend Tax testified to when they were here, well, then let's do the honorable thing and show and have that BPT be transparent. So with that, I ask for my colleagues' support. Mr. Masi, Mr. Speaker, and at this time, I move to place Bill 59-38 into the third reading voting file.
Okay, on the motion to move Bill 59-38 COR as amended, okay, into the third reading. There has been an objection. All those in favor of moving Bill 59-38 COR as amended to the third reading, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion passes. Bill 67-38, COR. Senator Jesse Lujan, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Mr. Speaker. Have a day, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move Bill 67-38 CR as amended by the Committee on Transportation, Tourism, Customs, Utilities, Federal and Foreign Affairs, as introduced by myself and co-sponsored by Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Tony Yada, Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Vince Borja, yourself, Mr. Speaker, Senator Salas Matanani, Senator Parkinson, Senator San Agustin, Senator Shango Mataltao, and I would add Senator Shelley, and I'll make that amendment when I'm done with the bill here, Mr. Speaker. But this is an act to repeal and reenact Section 1203.1 of Article 2, Title 12 Guam Code Annotated, relative to providing authority to the Antonio B. Wampat International Airport Authority, Guam, to adopt policies and procedures for the solicitation, selection, and award of agreements between the authority and any other parties for the use of airport facilities and properties for airport purposes and or visitor-related activities. To the third reading file, and I would like to have the opportunity to speak on this measure, Mr. Speaker.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I introduced Bill number 6738, CRR, after working closely with the Guam International Airport Authority, not just in this legislature, but also in the 37th Guam Legislature, and it dates back actually, Mr. Speaker, to when your dad was the chairman of the GIAA Airport Board of Directors back then. And if you remember back then, Mr. Speaker, because we had served in the previous legislature as well when we were granted the cargo exemption for cabotage. We were fortunate. We did ask for the whole ball of wax. Basically, we asked for the whole loaf. We were given half of the loaf. We were awarded the cargo exemption, not the passenger exemption. The unfortunate thing at the time, Mr. Speaker, is that the airport, again, wasn't quite, I mean, there were steps in getting it ready. The chairman at the time, of course, former Lieutenant Governor Frank Blas, very instrumental in getting FAA and monies to be able to extend out the runway. Stops, at least in Hawaii, along the way. Now that the airport has extended out its runway, we have the opportunity to fly commercially nonstop. We already do that. Commercial airlines already do that right now. Likewise, cargo planes, and actually over COVID, during COVID, we had all these planes carrying cargo that transited in Guam and going from getting supplies from, I guess, China or whatever, wherever they may be, coming to Guam, like the that Ukrainian plane that was on the runway that was there almost every month, right? So that being said, Mr. Speaker, working very closely with the airport and having organized site visits, actually, with our committee members, not just our committee members, but all senators or their staff that were interested to seeing the airport in its potential during this legislature as well, the previous legislature. To see, again, have a firsthand look at all the challenges faced at the airport and how we as policymakers is shutting its doors to the airport. And we have seen up north how DFS has shut its doors in Saipan Airport and in Garapan. We see the news about how businesses in our once thriving tourism districts, hotels, restaurants, retail establishments, all are struggling and shutting down. We need to take a holistic approach, Mr. Speaker, in revitalizing our tourism, and this is one big step of that puzzle. As the author, I am here today seeking your support, colleague support, on Bill number 6738 as amended. This bill is a simple language, but transformative in impact. It empowers the Antonio B. Wampat Guam International Airport Authority with the ability to adopt policies and procedures for solicitation, selection, and award of agreements related to the use of airport facilities for both airport purposes and visitor-related activities. Colleagues, our airport is more than just a transportation hub. It is a getaway to economic opportunity. It supports our tourism industry, powers small businesses, and is essential to regional commerce. But today, it is constrained by outdated limitations that undermine our ability to attract and retain meaningful investment. Through Bill 6738, CRR, we give the airport GIAA the tools to move with the agility and competitiveness needed in today's market. Long release terms, more flexible procurement processes, and clearer authority to manage assets will allow the airport to foster partnerships, spur development, and ensure its long-term financial health. I want to thank, of course, the stakeholders, the Guam Visitors Bureau, the Guam Chamber of Commerce, small business owners, the airline industry leaders who provided written testimony or oral testimony in strong support of this measure. Their message was clear. This legislation is not just a necessity, it is overdue. You know, Mr. Speaker, I just got, I've been actually speaking to the governor and her management team that are in Taiwan. They're there, they're in an economic tour, partnership tour. And as we speak, Mr. Speaker, one of the main topics they're talking about is this bill. They are monitoring it because there are companies that have been interested since the first introduction of the bill to come to Guam, most especially after it was announced, of course, about the tariffs that are going to be imposed in these foreign countries. There are companies very interested in coming to Guam to bring their products to final assembly here in Guam. As long as we add 30% value to products that are brought to Guam, it can be labeled made on Guam, because we are not subjected to tariffs, Mr. Speaker. There are computer companies right now that the governor and her team are meeting and monitoring right now what is happening. Airlines, Mr. Speaker, are definitely interested in opening their maintenance division here in Guam. As we all know, most of the airlines do not maintain their fleet out here in Guam. They have to go to other destinations. We have airline companies looking and wanting to build hangars to be able to maintain. We have Vet Air that is very interested in coming to Guam. They're out of Vietnam, of course. They're wanting to have their fleet maintained here in Guam. And the reason being is because they will have U.S. mechanics, U.S. certification to their maintenance, which will make it easier for Vet Air to be able to work with the Department of Transportation, should they decide, again, to try to fly into U.S. destinations. So we are in the brink of course, in the middle of a grim look at what's happening in our tourism industry. We have alternatives, Mr. Speaker, alternatives that our island and the airport has been working on for years. For years. This is a gem. This is a big gem that we have at our disposal that can work right now as an alternative to tourism. But not just really not an alternative, but if and when that happens and we have these companies coming here, the tourists will come as well. But these are alternatives to our economy here, Mr. Speaker. And again, as much has been said, in this body about taxes and things of that nature, and the grim outlook based on what President Trump has put forth. What he has put forth as well in regards to tariffs is welcome to us, because tariffs are not imposed on us, and we're tariff-free here. So that is what, again, the governor and her team is doing at this point, trying to entice these businesses to come to Guam for their final assembly. There's a company that called last week, Mr. Speaker, in regards to this is a company that assembles ground airport transportation. And because we're right here in the Western Pacific and a major hub to be able to distribute to either Europe or Asia and all that, they want to come here and assemble their products here, assemble their products here and ship them from here, Mr. Speaker. And these, again, are these equipment that services plane that we see on the runway. They want to come here. So this is good news for us. This is great news for us. This is an opportunity for us to, again, enhance our economy. Provide alternatives, Mr. Speaker. The airport has done a tremendous job. I've got to give airport management and previous management, and goes back, of course, to when Chairman Frank Bloss was leading the effort back then as well. And his vision, again, to expand the runway and bring in businesses here here to Guam. That dream is a reality now. And those efforts, the efforts that you put forth back then is getting very close to reality at this point, Mr. Speaker. Let's not miss this opportunity. We have companies very interested. And the time that, our big decline, I mean, I just heard again a couple of weeks ago that 2 other hotels are up for sale. It's not good. Let's start turning things around. We have that. We have the tools. We have the mechanism. We can do this. We have the facility. I ask my colleagues again for your support of Bill 67-38. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you. I yield back for the questions and comments on this measure, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Lujan. On the bill, are there any senators wanting to speak on the bill? On the bill. Good Senator from Talofofo, sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 67-38. Airports are vital national resources. Our Guam International Airport serves as our American bridge to the rest of the world. Our airport serves a key role in the transportation of people and goods and in regional, national, and international commerce. Over the years, we've seen improvements in the infrastructure there, from the terminals to the sterile areas where thousands of passengers annually move in or move to get in and around the Wampat International, to terminate their travel here in Guam or to transit to another partner airline to areas across Micronesia or into Asia. We have seen, all of us have seen, improvements to the runways, which can accommodate larger modern aircraft, to include the Antonov AN-225, at one point the world's largest aircraft. Something, though, has been missing, Mr. Speaker. What has been missing has been the ability of the Guam International Airport Authority to, in modern times, compete with airports in our region, offering up facilities in and around our airport that are in line with standards that have kept us from gaining more economic activity. There was an admission during the public hearing from those in attendance that Bill 67 should have been enacted sooner. We all watch with wonder and pride what Public Law 35114 or 17 GCA Chapter 16, Section 16139 has brought to the University of Guam when enacted 5 years ago. Modern facilities, investment, support for higher education. The statute has helped bring significant educational revenues to ULG Station. Bill 67 will certainly bring aeronautical and non-aeronautical revenues to our only civilian airport. Now, there are critics and those less favorable to this particular policy that cannot and will not give the Guam International Airport Authority the ability to lease for longer terms for any areas in and around the facility. To them, GIAA operates in a highly regulated environment. Because of the work done by the executive branch in support of expansion and new programs and processes over the past 30 years, all eyes, the Federal Aviation Administration, the U.S. Department of Transportation, in 2025 are now more than ever watching the work there, very keen to waste and abuse. Mr. Speaker, our lives and our economy rely on that ongoing federal oversight at the airport. Frankly, an oversight much larger than what we do here on a policy end in terms of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are pumped into every part of the facility annually at TDSN. Mr. Speaker, my last comment does not mean that what we do here in the Guam Congress building is not important for aviation policy. It is equally important. The GIAA can only do so much before they come here and ask for public policy support for the great work happening there, which surely contributes to the expansion of our island economy that today we need more than ever. It is common sense. Mr. Speaker, with Bill 67, GIAA has the potential to further develop its priorities and properties, and in the process generate additional revenue that will fund much-needed upgrades across the airport's entire footprint and maintain these improvements on a consistent basis moving forward. GIAA leadership, its management, its board has repeatedly made it clear over the last several years in this building that developers have reached out to the authority on the possibility of constructing new aviation facilities. However, these same businesses remain hesitant to engage with GIAA, recognizing the limits of the current statute governing the leasing of government land and facilities. Mr. Speaker, Bill 67 speaks to the reality of today's competitive environment for on-airport development projects and the need for potential developers or business entities to move through our public sector process quickly and efficiently with the potential to create lasting economic impact to the Guam International Airport Authority and, importantly, Mr. Speaker, to the people of Guam. I ask my colleagues to support this very important measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. On the bill, with Senator from Tamuning, sir, you recognize.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly rise in full support of Bill 6738, and I thank the good author, Senator Lujan, for having me as a co-sponsor and for allowing me to meet with him, members of the board of directors, management, and others from the airport who have been working so hard on this for nearly a decade or more. Mr. Speaker, I have to admit that in the past I've had my concerns and my reservations. But it was in the 37th Guam Legislature when I was kind of surprised. We even had difficulty just trying to extend after COVID and the lockdowns, the business concessions within the airport for 36 months after they had lost so much money. And they hung on. And that was a fight in this body, which I was surprised about, but pleasantly happy that it passed and those businesses remain. Those businesses and others and other concessions now under this legislation can look forward to an opportunity to have the stability of 15 years to be able to recoup their investment and have a strong, robust business in our AB Wampat Airport. Return on their investment and opportunities for our travelers, both local and those who come to visit our beautiful island, to have amenities equal to or better than other jurisdictions who boast beautiful and vibrant airports. But that's not the main thing I want to talk about. I'm going to stick to one subject that I just really enjoyed the testimony of. That was Dr. Rosanna Jones from the University of Guam that testified wholeheartedly in favor of this legislation. And primarily because of the properties surrounding the airport, particularly with aviation. She discussed with us that this legislation has the potential for transformational change on our island in a time of uncertainty and an economy that's teetering on one of its major industries, tourism, that is faltering and on a slow pace of recovery. But we have this gem of property up there under the GIA's control that they can maximize investment and opportunity and jobs, good jobs for our people surrounding the aviation industry. Along with Dr. Rosanna Jones, were other airline representatives, particularly in the cargo area, Asiana and others that came in to testify how right now they're refitting, they're doing general maintenance and major maintenance off of Guam, spending millions and millions of dollars when they could be doing that here on Guam, providing job opportunities, great job opportunities for our people, careers in aviation, an industry that can abound and really give an opportunity for our island to expand into not just service jobs, but professional jobs. Dr. Jones, if you go into the committee report, I'm sure you can find talks about how there are those that are being trained in AMP right now that love the job so much they're operating under palapalas, basically. Tent structures that have the simple tarps over them. But they're so committed to the industry and love the job that they have that they'll endure it. Can you imagine the expansion of hangars and proper facilities to provide for maintenance and repairs and upgrades and the routine certifications for aircraft right here on our island? Mr. Speaker, in a time when we all talk about economic development and we run for office and we talk about job opportunities and what we're going to do for our people and building industry, this is a time when the walk can meet that talk. I want to commend the board of directors at GIA, management, their fiscal team, for their persistence on ringing the bell and telling us, folks, we cannot on Guam continue to squander this awesome opportunity. I'll allow for the author, maybe when he closes, but there were amendments. I'll talk about at least one of them during the markup that was placed in this, even though gaming is not legal on Guam right now. Felt the need to put it into this bill because of speculation and discussions in the past that this was a gateway to some sort of gaming industry at the airport or ancillary properties. That amendment was put in this bill to reiterate our law, to prohibit any type of activity along with that. And I want to thank the author for understanding the speculative nature of which that was floated and ensuring that that's not even a consideration. But for all the other reasons, Mr. Speaker, all the other reasons, and I know the 50 years is going to probably be challenged on this floor, and the terms at which going forward businesses will respond to opportunities. But I can tell you something right now, and it's been made clear, and like the author of this legislation saying this bill is being closely monitored, and even on its introduction drew so much interest internationally with what we're planning to do here. And I'm praying that this bill passes unanimously if possible. But I will tell you right now that without doing that, we're just wasting our time here. Because it has been proven time and time again that there will be no significant interest to come to Guam and put in hundreds of millions of dollars of improvements and provide jobs and growth and economic benefit for our people without the ability to recoup that investment and to continue to invest in those operations that they will bring to Guam on the nautical and non-aeronautical properties surrounding the airport's properties within their inventory. So for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I will vote in favor of this bill, and I believe this is the beginning of major transformational change to really bring in new industries, new opportunities, and not just talk on the campaign trail about the opportunity for economic development and economic expansion, particularly in a time of uncertainty where we need to diversify. That is always the word. We need to diversify our economy. We have a golden gem just waiting to usher in diversification. I know the Port Authorities kind of joked on the side and what happened to us? You know, I really like the fact that the good senator and the mover of this bill, and I am his co-chair, said, airport, we're giving you the opportunity to show us everything you've spoken about in terms of maximizing this opportunity, and all eyes will be on you. That kind of scrutiny. And I believe in them. I believe they're going to do a wonderful job and do what they said they're going to do. But the fact is there it will be. And we have talked to the port and others and said, look, we're looking forward to this premier flagship of opportunity to demonstrate good governance, good opportunities for our people, and we'll continue to move from there, particularly when it comes to the transshipment opportunities that many senators in this hall as well, particularly one from Manila and Chalampago, our good colleague, has always pushed for opportunities with regard to expansion, transshipment opportunities, commerce opportunities, and the like. So let's step up, Mr. Speaker. Let's walk the walk on economic diversification. Let's trust our board, but verify, and let this premier asset of ours, the entire people of Guam, the AB Wampat Guam International Investment Airport, demonstrate the true resiliency and emblematic of who we are as a people pushing forward, being all that we can be in order to be able to, yeah, that's an Air Force, I intended that, or Armies be all you can be, and we're gonna aim high, Mr. Speaker, with this legislation going forward. So thank you for the opportunity and allowing me to speak on behalf of my support with Bill 6738. Sidus Masi.
Thank you very much. On the bill, good gentleman from Jigo, you standing up doesn't mean you want to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do you want to speak?
Yes, I wanted
you're
to
recognized.
speak on the bill before all the amendments come cruising in. You know, I might lose the thunder of what I was going to say. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this measure to give the Guam International Airport Authority with increased authority for 15 years for concession, up to 50 years for all facilities and properties of the airport. Concessions include retail, specialty retail, food and beverage, advertising, currency exchange, car rentals, and parking. These concession leases are required to conform with all rules and guidelines for competitive solicitation, selection, and award by the airport board with additional requirements set in this act. Airport facilities and property leases are for airline hangars, parking, maintenance, to name a few, and must be subject to the FAA requirements, including fair market value pursuant to FAA policies and procedures, adopted by the Guam International Airport Authority Board. A reminder, all leases must conform with federal laws, subject to the airport's bond covenant. Reminder, the bond covenant. For too long, unfortunately, we all participated in preventing the growth in the infrastructure and capabilities of our local airport. Can't point a finger at anybody. We all participated in it. Every year, when they asked, I said, "Maila na itinigi that presenta," but it never moved. With these increases from 5 to 15 years for concession and 5 to 50 years for other airport facilities, we will help the airport increase their ability to truly serve as an international airport. We will be giving Guam the opportunity to ensure growth while bringing increased revenues that result from additional retail services, food option, aviation construction, to name a few. A reminder, increased revenue. You need to be mindful of that. Passing this bill will increase the economic activity the airport will be bringing to our island through skies that they have control of. Like my previous caller said, A, be all you can be. Let's just get her done and let's move on and help the airport do their job. And let's bring the industry in. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill. On the bill. Any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Good Senator from Zonia, you're recognized, sir.
Sidus Masia, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on the bill. You know, and when I was watching the public hearing, I kind of had a thought on why we would even need this bill, as this 38th Guam Legislature passed a bill in our first session that eliminated legislative approval for any leases for any amount of time. So the legislature is no longer involved in the scrutiny or the engagement or oversight of any leases that any government of Guam agency enters into. And so this bill allows terms up to 15 years and also up to 50 years. So, you know, of course, my initial thought was, why do they need the bill when we've already removed, not me, I didn't vote for it, but we've already removed ourselves from scrutinizing and involvement in these long-term leases. But I think why they need the bill is because they're eliminating the need for the airport to comply with our procurement law. And it says here, the visitor-related activity shall conform to the following with regard to concession agreements, shall be authorized for a term of up to 15 years, and shall be subject to policies and procedures for the competitive solicitation, selection, and award of concession agreements adopted from time to time by the Guam International Airport Authority's Board of Directors. And while I absolutely understand some of the discussion that was put forth relative to what some would say could be transformational legislation, I'm just not comfortable with giving the board, any board really, the authority to enter into 50-year agreements outside of our very stringent procurement law. And so I'm grateful to see the amendments that are forthcoming that will seek to add this into the bill. Because 50 years is a long time. And we have a board in place now, an executive manager in place that, for all intents and purposes, we're going to change these people out by the end of the next year and in 2027. And so I'm just a little hesitant to bind the people of Guam to such a long-term agreement. And we're not going to be able to scrutinize this agreement. These agreements are not going to be subject to the procurement law. I mean, we don't even follow the open government law in here ourselves relative to our committee reports, as a point was raised on a previous bill. So yeah, I don't think I'll be supporting this. Although I do understand. I mean, if we can get the amendment in and make these leases and the awarding of these long-term engagements subject to some kind of legislative scrutiny, oversight, or procurement code, I'd be a lot more comfortable with moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, any senator wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill, any senator wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. You want to take a recess? Let's take a 1-minute recess. Back in session. Are we ready? Couple more. All right, take a couple more minutes. The senator's not ready. We're back on recess. Back from recess. Any senator wishing to speak on the bill? Any senator wishing to speak on the bill? All right. Go, try with it. Senator from, gentlelady from Jonah, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the time. The amendments that I had prepared, I think, are based on the original bill and not on the amended bill. So if you would bear with me. First of all, I'd just like to speak on the bill in general. As you know, just earlier in this term, we passed a law, the legislature passed a law allowing for leases that used to be limited to 5 years without legislative approval or without a determination of need. That was changed, and now leases can be made up to 15 years without legislative approval, might even be longer, depending on interpretation of that law, but definitely 15 years. And That's possible. They can also be longer if they follow a certain procedure, which the airport has not ever attempted to do for any of its leases for the real property surrounding the airport. And, but I just wanted to make a point that they do have tools available to them that they have not used. I don't have any objection to the arguments of what we're trying to do with the economy and how we can grow our economy using airport lands, the lands that actually original landowners did not get back, that were left in trust to the airport so that they will grow our economy. And so I'm in support of that. And I do expect them to use their best duties to do that and not to make any more excuses, really, because I think they do have tools available to them. But I do, the bill as originally written had me concerned because there was a lack of transparency and a very big grant of full authority to the airport to make its own policies without any review by anyone, without any public hearing, without following the procurement law, without following many of the laws that they expressly exempt. I remember at the hearing, one of the senators said, "Why aren't we trusting the board?" This is, I think, wrongly framed that way, whether we trust the board or we don't. We can trust everybody, but we've got laws in place all over Guam, and that's because we want to make sure that everybody knows this is our priority. This is what we want to be followed. This is how we want to govern ourselves. The last procurement that the airport board did, multi-million dollars, was subject to 10 years of litigation for violations of procurement laws and rules. And so I do not think it's appropriate that we grant full authority for anyone in the government to write their own rules and to be able to change those rules whenever they want, when these are just the realities that name any board, and we want them to be subject to review of the public auditor. We want them to be subject to review of the Attorney General. We want these agencies we want to be sure as representatives of the public that we are going to get good governance no matter who's in there. And we can all trust who's in there right now, but what the changes we are making to statute for perpetuity. For contracts up to 50 years, these are potentially multi-millions of dollars again. This bill will allow a majority vote, which would be possibly 3, of a quorum of 4, of a 7-member board of the airport to decide to lease for 50 years our most valuable property on Guam. And if it's a great deal, then great. But if it's not such a great deal, 50 years from now will be 2075. That will be 12 governors from now. It will be 25 terms of the legislature from now. 18-year-olds will be 68 years old. They will have no say at all. If the properties are all leased for 50 years, they will never, their entire generation will have no input, no way to make a presence on those properties at the airport. So I appreciate the amendments that have been made by the committee to add some additional protections, a lot of these at the request of the chamber, and I very much appreciate those. So now the bill has some additional protections. It makes it a lot more fair. And but again, I still think it just gives a very broad authority. We did have some examples in the public hearing of, for example, Air Vietnam, and for them, 30 years was acceptable. But the bill really, gives 50 years, and it says it's going to comply now with these other requirements. So I'm going to try to do my amendments. They might be numbered and paged wrong, so you would bear with me. These amendments are intended to just increase the protections for the people of Guam. This is, after all, their property. It was trusted to the airport and the trustees up there, the board of directors. So I think it's fair. So now that the new bill has put into the 15 years for concessions, additional procedures such as the fiscal assessment posted a copy of the policies on the website for 30 days for public comment, hold a public hearing, and those things. Those things I very much appreciate. So one of my amendments is to, on subsection, let me see if I have a subsection 1, forgive me. Let's see. On subsection 1, it's to add in the Guam Procurement Law. So that would be, it says lines 5 to 14, page 5, to amend subsection A and A1 of 1203.1 of the bill, if you could find that amendment. So it does the same thing in both places. It strikes out chapter 5 because I think the procurement law, which is in chapter 5, should apply. And in subsection 1, it adds in and double underline the Guam Procurement Law, 5 GCA chapter 5.
Which amendment are you referring to, ma'am?
So this one is AB 67 TMT L5-14, page 5. It amends subsection A and A1.
AB 67 TMT L5-14 P5?
Yeah, P5. Page 5. Okay, I see the numbering now. So P5. Here we go.
Can you repeat the amendment again, please?
The amendment is on the second line, the chapter 5 is struck through. So striking that out there means that I want chapter 5 to apply because these are the exemptions. This law, this bill exempts the airport authority currently from the procurement law in chapter 5, 5127, which is the how do you get leases over 15 years? And exempts them from all of these other laws. So my amendment is to put back in chapter 5, the procurement law. And that the same thing is done on subsection 1 below where it's double underlined Guam procurement law.
Okay. This is AB 67 TMT L5-14 P5 submitted at 4:25 p.m. Right? That's the right, we're on the right one, ma'am? No, on your right, 4:25. On the amendment, gentlelady from Tumuni, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of this. Here we just had the same type of, well, no, this is the procurement. I'm looking at the other one. This is a procurement law that requires, I think this is very important. It provides a safety net, for everyone involved, not just at the airport, so that they don't, go off track and create their own little rules and regulations that may veer away from what every other agency on this island has to follow through. You know, they're not a separate branch of government, the airport. So I think this is definitely needed. And it's the same procedure for all other agencies. So why would we not allow this to happen? It puts safety mechanisms, I keep saying that, but I think this is a good amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, gentleman from Zonia, you're recognized.
Cito Smasi, Mr. Speaker, to rise in support of the amendment. I definitely think we have to adhere to the procurement law. You know, to give that much authority to what the senator from Trojan said, 3 people committing the government of Guam to a 50-year lease term with little to no outside scrutiny. It just sounds like Baba deal me. But you know, I think why this isn't in the bill is because they don't want to have to deal with the procurement law. I think it was very clear if you watched the hearing and if you even listened to the sponsor of the bill, this is the new procurement. It seems like this is the new procurement. Never mind an RFP, never mind a bid, just go to your senator, have them jam through some, you know, special interest legislation. Because it's very clear that even in the hearing, there's already an entity that wants to enter into a 50-year lease. It's very clear from this session that the governor over in Taiwan has somebody that they're already ready to sign. And I think why they don't want the procurement is maybe they wouldn't be able to make it through that process, which for me is a huge red flag. So I stand in support of the amendment. I think it's very basic, and I humbly ask for my colleagues to support it. Although, you know, realistically, I think that might not be likely, but por favor, si dos más sí.
On the amendment, gentlelady from Barragata, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in full support of this amendment. Like the retiring speaker said, this is a protection for, you know, our island. And as the author of the amendment stated, somebody who's 18 years old, should there be something wrong with this agreement, may not be able to do anything. You know, they become 68-year-olds and, you know, they can't do anything if this agreement is bad. And so I think, you know, really it should be about, you know, we've seen already the problems when we do not abide by the procurement law, you know, as we saw during COVID. You know, we contracted out, or there was I guess we didn't have it in contract, and yet we paid vendors without a contract.
Senator Perez, I need to make sure that your presentation is consistent with the amendment here.
Right. So what this amendment does is that it ensures
you make mention an 18-year-old will be 68 years old by the time it's done. This is referencing to up to a lease of up to 15 years.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me go.
Just make sure.
You.
I just want to make sure we're in the same amendment here.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you.
So I mean, I appreciate this amendment because, you know, we've seen cases in the recent history where we were paying vendors without a contract, and of course during COVID times we won't be able to be reimbursed, and so it really hurts our people financially in multiple ways. And even as recent as I think a couple weeks ago, DRT was paying a vendor without a contract. So I think that, you know, we really need to, instead of laxing the regulations, it's important that we ensure the regulations are in place. It protects the taxpayers of Guam, it protects the government, and you know, in discussing this over with the airport, I know one of the concerns with concession agreements is not covered in the procurement law, but that doesn't mean that we remove it altogether. So I think this procurement law is there to protect our island. And so if we're looking at, increasing our economy, which I'm all for, right? I'm all for developing our economy, even an export economy, right? I think that's critical. But to turn a blind eye to protections that could undermine the economic development for our island is not a wise thing. And so I think this amendment will help ensure that economic development can go forward sustainably. Mr. Masi.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, any senator wishing to speak on the amendment? Gentleman from Tumuning, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I oppose the amendment. Mr. Speaker, this bill really restores the bureaucracy that the bill was designed to fix. The purpose of Bill 6738 is to grant GIAA the flexibility to operate like other successful airport authorities, nimbly and competitively. Reimposing Guam's procurement laws through this amendment undergoes the flexibility and puts us back in the same red tape-laden system that caused delays and lost opportunities in the past. I mean, when folks are talking about what's happening, I mean, nobody's citing anything that the airport has done illegally at this point. And then to say that we only have these board members and it is going to require 3. And if that's the case, you don't trust your board members, why the heck did you confirm them? There's procedures in place for this already, Mr. Speaker. And I wish that some of the folks in this body will understand that airports are not a one-size-fits-all business model that we have. It doesn't operate that way. Like I said, this bill was not just crafted from was not born out of something that just happened from last year or last legislature, and this legislature. It's been over 10 years to come to this point. The airport had to be built out to be able to get to this point. We finally built it out. One of the things is, as well that maybe the Bobby doesn't understand, when you talk about fair market value, FAA, yes, FAA requires that non-aeronautical businesses have to adhere to fair market value. If it's aeronautical related, it doesn't apply. Fair market value doesn't apply. Airport business and airport operations is a changing operation. It's very different. That is why, again, I had asked my colleagues in this legislature and the previous legislature to tour the airport, to understand holistically their operations. I have been to numerous airports with the board and a couple of their management people. And one of the things we ask them is, when you guys enter into leases, you guys go to your lawmakers to approve this? No, we have our board, we have our folks here that decide. No, this is our airport property. Well, this is how they're able to react almost instantaneously to market forces, to what's happening out there. We're dying in the vine here, Mr. Speaker. And like I said, this is not a bill that was crafted a year ago or 2 years ago. We needed to build out the airport to be able to get to this point. GIA already has the safeguards in place. It has its own boards and internal procurement policies that are reviewed, audited, and approved. This bill already requires GIA to develop competitive policies and procedures for awarding concessions. It does not eliminate oversight, it modernizes it, Mr. Speaker. Competitive advantage is definitely at stake here, Mr. Speaker. Airports compete for high-value tenants, vendors, and investors. Our regional competitors, it'd be Manila, Korea, South Korea, even Honolulu, can no longer lease terms and can offer longer lease terms and faster deal execution than we can. We're losing that competitive edge because we don't trust. We're saying we don't trust our board. We don't trust Mr. Weekly. We don't trust Rosie Tanatongo. We don't trust Brian Bomba. We don't trust Jess Garcia. We don't trust these guys. We don't trust any of the board members that we confirmed. That this body has confirmed. We have oversight, and I intend on calling an oversight for airport next month, Mr. Speaker. That is one of our duties, is to conduct oversight. And one of the things that I told the airport is that we're granting this, I'm not even granting this to the Port Authority. I'm saying, so all eyes are on you. It's either you're going to make this right or you're going to screw it up. Because all eyes are going to be on you. And all eyes and the economy of Guam will begin to turn around based on what we do up there. Boards in the past, with this current board and boards in the past and management in the past have paved this way for us to be here today. We have that opportunity. But I guess it's a mistrust. It's corrupt. It's sweetheart deals. Yes, absolutely. Are people interested? Absolutely. We're putting it out there. We're inviting people. We're telling them, yes, we have this bill. Yes. This is one of the things that's being looked at. So if they're saying that, yeah, there are people already interested, does that mean they're already corrupt because we're having people interested? We're putting it out there so they know to come here instead of going to our competitors in the Philippines or South Korea or Japan. Come to Guam. We have this opportunity. Yes, that is, we're selling, yes. And do I want a sweetheart deal? Absolutely I want a sweetheart deal. I want a sweetheart deal for the people of Guam. It's about time we have sweetheart deals for the people of Guam. And yes, it's a mechanism. Yes, we are touting this. Why? Because our competitors are touting what they have. And they're saying, come to us. Guam does not have that. We have it. You don't. And then to say that because we're touting that, it's corrupt, it's sweetheart deal. Or maybe if you would have come to all my invites about coming and tour the airport, I would have answered your questions. But you didn't. So again, Mr. Speaker, I trust our board, and as the chairman of the airport, if they screw this up, they will answer to this people's house. To every single committee member, every single person in this body. That's why we're here, that's why we have oversights. And that's why we're given the authority to confirm board members. And if you don't trust a board member, if there's a potential that you see that it's gonna be shady, don't confirm them. Because that is what you're saying at this point. You don't trust any of them. It only comes down to 3. I have oversight of GPA as well. They're saying, you know, if we had to come to you, Okudu would never happen. because we have the industry experts. None of us are industry experts here, Mr. Speaker. The folks that are in the other room are industry experts. We're not. We represent them. We're their voice. They're the experts. We're trying to take that expertise away from them. You sit on my committee, you know that we have meetings, we know that we have oversight, you know that we're visiting our agencies. And you know we hold them accountable. I can't speak for your previous chairs. But I'll be damned if any of my agency oversights are going to screw up on my watch. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, any other senator wishing to speak on the amendment? No? No other speakers? There has been an objection to the amendment. You want to close on your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to address some of these things that have been brought up, like this, we should not abide by the procurement law in an agency because we should trust directors. That is a ludicrous argument. If that was the case, then what do we have a procurement law for? We have many directors and board members who we trust all across the government, but we require all of them to follow the procurement law because the procurement law is supposed to bring to Guam value. It's supposed to bring competition, fairness. It has a whole procedure built in there for objections, for protests, for when something was done wrong or unfairly. This policies and procedures that get to be set and don't even get to be reviewed by the legislature, that offers no protection for the people of Guam. The only protection it has is it has to be, for the concessions, it says competitive. For the other land, it doesn't. For the concessions, they have to have a public hearing, but they don't have to do anything else. I think the time is wrong. No? I'm closing on the bill? I'm on the amendment? And and again, this is going to go 15 years. Why shouldn't we have solid? They said they've been working on this for years, yet they could not produce any guidelines for us. The guidelines that they want to adopt, they will not let us see them. I don't need to look at the airport to know about guidelines and laws and rules, and that we want every board member, revolving board members, 50 years from now board members who are going to be governed by this. We just want to have some semblance of, is our procurement law bad? Then change it. Otherwise, we have a system that has checks and balances in it for the protection of the people of Guam, and we want to move our most valuable assets to a zero guaranteed protection system. I love the directors. That doesn't mean, if that was enough, then why were we in 10 years of litigation for alleged violation of procurement laws and rules? And I think one court even found that happened. I don't even know the status of that case. All I know is it was litigated for 10 years. So don't tell me, and don't make it so condescending to the people of Guam that trust these three people with your most valuable assets. Don't question them. Don't require of them to follow any procurement laws. Don't have any checks and balances on them. We can move fast as a government if we can be transparent about it. If they could lay on the table what it is that they want. They have a process to put in place for, if they wanted to extend their terms, they could have long-term leases. But they refuse to follow that process.
I've given you latitude, so.
Pardon?
I've given you a latitude. to
Am I
finish closing.
still closing on my
Well,
amendment?
you've got, your 10 minutes is up.
No,
No,
that's not correct. Pardon?
that is correct.
No, I know, but I am closing on my amendment, right?
Continue. Just know that you've done it, your 10 minutes is up.
That's not according to the timekeepers, Mr. Speaker.
Continue.
You know, I don't know how we're supposed to function in here when we've got different rules coming from different people. We've got a timekeeper
Speaker,
keeping time.
I'm
I'm trying to
I'm
follow
gonna call
that.
the point. I'm going to call the order on this.
Pardon?
Okay? I'm going to call the order of this. This is the same 10-minute time limit that you had in your legislature too. I'm using the same 10-minute time limit. I gave so that you can finish your argument.
Thank you.
Okay? I gave that to you to finish your argument. Finish your argument, ma'am.
Thank you. You gave me the 10 minutes. Thank you. This is not something personal. And this is where I think we are going to fail. If we want to treat this as something personal, it is not. This is business transactions. We want to make business transactions, and let's do that. You want to do it by industry standards? Let's do that. You want to do it by the whim of 3 members of a board who gets to change the policy whenever they want? They don't have to accommodate any suggestions that have been made. They don't. Even when the legislature is trying to pass a procurement law or an amendment to the procurement law, the scrutiny that we put ourselves under, or that bill under, is greater than the scrutiny that the rules and the policies and procedures of the airport are going to undergo. And just like all our other agencies have to comply with other mandates, federal mandates, that's good. But that doesn't mean we waived all our procurement laws for them. We still required them to do that. And we have seen in so many instances abuse. I am not accusing anyone at the airport of abuse or potential abuse, but I am saying it has happened. And why would we be ignorant to that? And I just, this is not personal to me, but if you're going to start telling me I have to go on tours with you to understand whether we should follow a procurement law or make random rules and regulations, let's just get back to the real business. It's like, this is a bill. It's granting that authority. That is my amendment. It is to restore in the bill. They're going to be exempt from all kinds of laws, but they're not going to be exempt from the procurement law. They're going to be exempt from the 15-year law, but they're not going to be exempt from the procurement law. So that is my amendment. That's the first amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, there has been an objection. So if there's in the objection, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Amendment fails. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:20 We're going to go ahead and take a dinner break, and we'll be back here at 7:30. Recess until 7:30.